Have you ever wondered why some people feel powerful only when they are making someone else feel small? And why that behavior almost always comes from fear rather than confidence? In the story of a billionaire wife insulting a flight attendant, what we are really watching is not wealth on display, but insecurity, dressed in luxury. Because when a woman believes her value comes from status alone, she uses that status to dominate instead of connect. Many women quietly relate to this moment because society has trained us to think respect is something we must earn through appearance, marriage, or the man beside us. Yet the flight attendant reminds us that dignity is not granted by money. It is carried within. Notice how the insult wasn't loud or violent. It was subtle, polished, and socially acceptable, which is exactly how modern racism and classism often operate, especially against women in service roles. And here's where psychology becomes powerful for you. Men do not obsess over women who try to prove superiority. They obsess over women who are grounded, self-respecting, and emotionally unshakable, because calm confidence activates admiration, not fear. The billionaire wife believed dominance would earn control. But control never creates attraction. It creates distance and resistance. As women, the lesson is not to compete for power in rooms designed to test our worth, but to recognize when our silence, our professionalism, and our self-respect already place us above the insult. The flight attendant's composure quietly disrupted the hierarchy. And that is something deeply attractive and threatening at the same time, because people expect reactions, not restraint. When men watch women handle disrespect with clarity, rather than chaos, their obsession comes from knowing they cannot manipulate her emotions. This story teaches you that your power is not in responding to every slight, but in choosing when your energy is worth spending. The pilot's intervention didn't come because the attendant begged for justice. It came because her dignity made the injustice visible. That is a life lesson. When you protect your inner balance, the world is forced to correct itself around you. As a therapist would say, you don't need to raise your voice to raise your value. And you don't need to lower yourself to teach someone respect. Let this story anchor you in the truth that your presence, your boundaries, and your self-respect create a gravity that no insult can escape. And that is the kind of power that changes everything. Why do our minds immediately label silence as weakness, when in reality silence is often the most intelligent response the human nervous system can choose under threat?
Oh.
In the moment the billionaire wife insulted the flight attendant, the silence that followed was not empty. It was full of calculation, self-preservation, and emotional mastery, because reacting would have given power to someone who was seeking control. Many women watching this scene feel it in their bodies because they have been there at work. In relationships, in public where speaking up could cost safety, income, or peace. The flight attendant's quiet professionalism was not submission. It was strategy, and psychology teaches us that emotionally regulated women are the ones men struggle to dominate and secretly obsess over. Men are drawn to women whose emotions cannot be hijacked because unpredictability frightens. But calm steadiness commands attention. The billionaire wife expected a reaction, maybe a trembling voice or a defensive explanation. But silence denied her the satisfaction of superiority. For women, this is a critical lesson. You do not have to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Silence, when chosen consciously, protects your dignity and keeps your power intact. In that cabin, the flight attendants. Calm created contrast, and contrast reveals truth. One woman was loud with entitlement. The other was quiet with self-respect. Men observing such moments don't admire aggression. They admire emotional control, because it signals high self-worth. And strong boundaries. What should you do when faced with disrespect? First, regulate your body, because power begins in the nervous system, not in words. Second, remember that silence is not the end of the story. It is the pause before the right authority steps in, just like the pilot did. The pilot spoke because the silence made the injustice undeniable. As a therapist would tell you, not every battle needs your voice. Some need your restraint. Silence buys clarity, and clarity invites support. Let this story teach you that your quiet strength confuses those who try to diminish you and attracts those who respect you. When you choose silence with self-trust, you are not disappearing. You are rising above. And that is the kind of presence that changes how the world treats you. Why do human beings recognize injustice instantly yet wait for someone else to speak? First, as if courage is something that belongs to authority rather than to conscience. In the moment, the billionaire wife insulted the flight attendant. The cabin became a mirror of society, full of eyes watching and hearts racing, yet mouths staying closed. Many women understand this silence because they have felt it around them, when they were judged, doubted, or disrespected, and that shared quiet can feel lonelier than the insult itself. The story becomes powerful not because everyone noticed, but because almost no one acted, and that truth is uncomfortable. Psychologically, people freeze when status enters the room, especially when wealth or influence is involved. And women are often conditioned to absorb discomfort so others don't have to feel it. But then the pilot's voice changes everything. And that shift is emotionally electric because it restores balance where it was missing. His intervention proves that authority, when aligned with values, can break collective silence and rehumanize the moment. For women watching, the lesson is subtle but essential. You do not need to convince the room of your worth. Your composure already does that work for you. Men tend to obsess over women who don't beg for validation because restraint signals inner certainty and high standards. The flight attendant's dignity created a vacuum that demanded leadership, and true leadership stepped in. What should you do when everyone is watching but no one is helping? Stay grounded, stay aligned with your role, and trust that injustice exposed calmly cannot hide for long. As a therapist would say, the nervous system reads safety before words, and the pilot sensed the imbalance because the attendant never lost herself. This story teaches that when you hold your center, you force the world to reveal who is willing to protect fairness and who is only comfortable observing it. Your job is not to shout louder than the injustice, but to remain so anchored that someone with power cannot ignore it. Let this moment remind you that your calm presence invites the right voices to rise, and when they do, the entire atmosphere changes. That is the quiet power that transforms a cabin, a room, and eventually a life. Why do we instinctively respect people who use their power to protect others and feel uneasy around those who use it to dominate, even when both appear confident on the surface? When the pilot finally spoke after the billionaire wife insulted the flight attendant, his authority didn't arrive as anger or humiliation. It arrived as calm structure, and that is what made it unforgettable. In that moment, the cabin felt safe again, not because someone shouted, but because someone responsible chose fairness over flattery. Many women feel deeply connected to this scene because they know how rare it is for power to be used in their defense rather than over them. Psychology shows us that authority anchored in values creates trust instantly, and that trust is magnetic. Men don't obsess over women who chase validation from powerful people. They obsess over women who align themselves with integrity because integrity cannot be bought, controlled, or ignored. The pilot did not care who the billionaire wife was married to, what brand she wore, or how much money she had. He cared about the standard of behavior in his space. That clarity is something women can learn from and apply in their own lives. When you define your standards clearly and live by them quietly, you teach others how to treat you without having to demand respect. The flight attendant never asked to be rescued, yet she was protected, because her self-respect activated someone else's sense of responsibility. As a therapist would explain, healthy authority does not seek applause. It seeks balance, and people feel calmer around it because it reduces chaos. Men are naturally drawn to women who embody this same energy, women who don't bend their values for comfort or attention. What should you do when faced with someone using status to intimidate you? Anchor yourself in your principles, not in their opinion. The pilot's action shows that real power is quiet, consistent, and fair. And when you mirror that energy in your own life, you become someone others want to stand beside, not over.
Ow.
Let this story teach you that the highest form of influence is protection, not control. And when you live that truth, respect follows you naturally, without noise, without fear. and without compromise. Why does pride feel so powerful in the moment, yet leave such an empty echo when it finally collapses? Why do we only understand this after watching someone lose control they thought they owned? When the billionaire wife fell silent at the end of the flight, that silence carried a very different weight than the flight attendant's earlier calm. Because this silence was born from realization, not restraint. In that cabin, money could no longer speak, and status had no language. And that is when the truth became visible to everyone watching. Many women connect deeply with this moment because they have seen how quickly arrogance dissolves when it meets unshakable principles. Psychology tells us that pride built on external power cannot survive boundaries. And the pilot's decision created a boundary that wealth could not cross. Men do not obsess over women who rely on superiority to feel important. They are drawn to women who are comfortable without needing to dominate because inner security is rare and compelling. The billionaire wife's loss of control revealed something important for every woman watching. Respect cannot be forced, and humiliation often returns to its source. What should you do when someone believes their status places them above others? You do nothing to lower yourself, because time and structure will expose what words never could. The flight attendant never celebrated the outcome, never smirked, never claimed victory. And that restraint is exactly why her dignity remained intact. As a therapist would gently remind you, real strength doesn't need an audience, and it doesn't need revenge to feel complete. The collapse of pride is often quiet, and that quiet is where growth begins if one is willing to listen. Men notice women who don't chase the moment of triumph, because grace under pressure signals emotional maturity and depth. This story leaves you with a grounding truth. When you let go of ego and stay aligned with your values, you outlast those who rely on power alone. Carry this lesson into your life. Choose composure over conquest, self-respect over reaction, and let your presence speak so clearly that no insult can stand in front of it.